Hello, I'm going to tell you how I set up my transects for distance sampling of butterflies. So I'm using pin flags to mark my transects. These are quite long, these are 30-inch pin flags, and you can see them, they're sticking well up above the grass, but I need to do that because I'm going to be using them for a month or more, and during that time the vegetation is likely to grow up a foot or even 2 feet. So, it's going to become harder to find the line as the vegetation develops. So I know where my transects start and end. I've used GPS coordinates, and they're in my handheld GPS unit. So using these coordinates, I've marked the start of the transect, and you can see I've used double pin flags here, and I'll probably write the transect number on the pin flag. I'm carrying them around in this very convenient bag. It's from a piece of camping equipment, but if you're carrying a lot of pin flags, having something like this is essential. So I used the GPS for this particular method of laying out the transect. Here's my GPS unit. It's just an ordinary handheld Garmin, and I have a long piece of flagging, so it's much easier to find it when I accidentally drop it. All my pieces of equipment have flagging for that reason. So I simply called up the track on the GPS unit and followed it, and put in these green pin flags at intervals. The interval is not important. These are at 5 meters, so you can see them, but normally I'd use 10 or 15 meters apart, something like that, and I just use paces. So I'd stop every 15 paces along the line and put in a flag. I'd check every so often to make sure the flags were lining up in a straight line. They don't always do that, especially if you're putting in the transect on hilly terrain, because the GPS line will actually change as, say, a satellite goes behind the hill or something like that, and then your line will move slightly and you'll get a slightly wavy line. That absolutely doesn't matter. As long as it's basically a straight line between 2 points, a little bit of flex curves in it won't matter. If you're a purist, you can try and straighten them all out, but that's not necessary. And you're going to establish a line that you walk. You're not actually going to walk this line, because if you did, you'd trip over all the pin flags. So you'll probably walk on one side all the time, and that will actually wear a track. I think the ones they do at Fern Ridge you can see on satellite images after the end of the season. So after a while you'll be able to follow the track that you've made, and that'll be your transect. So it's good to be able to see several flags at once, because that's how you line yourself up. You may have to leave the transect to chase a butterfly or do something like that, or measure a distance, and you want to know where the transect is when you come back to it. The easiest way to do that is to line up the flags. If you only have one flag in sight, anywhere you can make a straight line to that flag from anywhere, all 360 degrees. So you need to be able to see more than one, and preferably more than one in each direction. And that way you'll be able to line yourself up and get yourself exactly back onto your transect. So let's go and set up another transect. So once again, I've used my GPS unit to find the origin of the transect. It's very likely that you'll want to take your flags out every year rather than leave these plastic pollution all over the meadows. So when you do that, it's a good idea to permanently mark the beginning and end of the transect. You could either leave a few of the flags in, leave these in and take out all the others, or put in some other marker that you can, so you can find the spot, or really importantly, someone else can find the spot, you know, the next year. So I'm going to use a GPS line and put in red flags. Now if you remember, if you look at the other transect over there, you'll see that it's green. So I've got green and red, and that's very important. Alternate colours, marker colours for your transects, because it's very easy when you're just walking along and focus mostly on butterflies to get lost. So I could be on this transect, but then by the time I'd got my attention back again, I might be on the next one over. And I don't want to do that. So by having different colours, I'll know that I'm on the red transect, and those are the flags I'm looking for. I don't get tempted to go over there and mistakenly be on the green one. So all I do is follow the line and count the paces and insert a pin flag. As I said, I'm going to do it at 5-meter intervals so you can see them, but normally I do 10 to 15 or even 20 meter intervals, depending on, you know, how easy it is to see them. So here I go. Well, I think that'll do us. So I have a straight line here. I used 2 different techniques. First of all, I had the line on my GPS unit, and that marked the spot where I was standing. So when my spot was on the line, I stopped, and then I actually lined myself up with the pin flags. A line of flags is very, very accurate. You know, by eye you can just put in a flag that's, you know, within a sort of few inches of the exact spot where it should be. So by following the GPS and then lining up the flags, I'm getting a really nice looking line that I'm going to be using for my 6 butterfly transects. So now let's go back and look at a post I've put in over here. So maybe you don't want to put in pin flags. Maybe your vegetation is going to get taller, so tall that it'll way overtop them, you won't be able to find them. You can use any marker you want that's acceptable to the landowner. So in this case, this is just a garden stake with flagging, and it's, what, 5 feet tall. So I could use markers like this. I wouldn't need as many. I can see a tree over there that's 100 yards away. If I hung flagging on that tree, I could create a straight line here just by walking without any further markers. So, you know, doing it this way, having taller, more obvious markers, you need fewer of them. The problem with doing this is that it's easier to get off the line. Each census you're supposed to be following the same track, and you know, if your markers are very far apart, there's a good chance that you won't be able to see more than one of them at some point, and even seeing 2 on each side of you, it's quite difficult to get back on track. So that's a problem there. but you know, it's up to you and your site. You have to decide what's best, and if you do have few markers and you're doing the transect, then you know, if you leave it, put something on the ground. Maybe if you're carrying a pack or whatever, just drop it on the ground where you leave the transect. In fact, it's a good idea to do that anyway, and that way you can come back to the exact spot where you left off to continue your work. So we'll be dealing with other aspects of the monitoring, particularly how you collect the data, in future videos. Thank you.